Alright, I've talked about making gold by gathering at Janthir Wilds, about how you will most likely be able to make a ton of gold by preparing for the legendary spear, so let's finally cover making gold by crafting in the Janthir Wilds, as some of these recipes will allow you to make more gold from the materials you've already been gathering. But there are a couple of pitfalls to look out for. We'll skip over Homestead runestones entirely, as you can't use these in any recipe just yet. You'll probably need 100 or a stack for the spear, so make sure to hang on to some, or do what I do, keep them until the next update, as people will most likely want to pay more for them then. Now, when it comes to the 4 materials that you can gather throughout both maps, you've got a couple of options. I've mainly been selling mine, foregoing the hassle of figuring out what to craft and what to avoid, but it is time we take a look at the different recipes. First, you can combine some ectos and orichalcum with honey flowers and lowland pine logs into sweet treated pine planks, or with charged titan ore and rotted titan amber into neutralized titan alloy. While both of them sell for a higher price than the cost of their ingredients, it is actually not worth selling them, as the trading post taxes will wipe out any profit you're expecting to make for the alloy and barely leave any for the planks. Instead, you could use both as an ingredient for the Titanplate Armor, the planks for the helmet, chest and boots, and the alloy for the other 3. Not all pieces sell at a profit though, so you're best off using a calculator like the one on GW2 Efficiency to determine which ones to craft, but there are a couple more things to look out for. Depending on which armor weight you want to craft, you'll need oiled orichalcum, oiled hardened leather, or oiled gossamer components. Efficiency is recommending you buy these, as you'll save anywhere from 40 silver to 1 gold, but the problem here is their volume. The amount that gets sold on a daily basis is actually not enough to sustain a continuous crafting operation, so you're probably better off taking the hit and lowering your profit. Alternatively, you could also farm the flax gardens on all of your alts every day, which doesn't necessarily lower the crafting cost, but will lower the amount of gold you need to cough up per piece yourself. The second problem you'll run into are the research nodes. I already have a guide that will help you acquire these either cheap or fast, and my favorite method is crafting mithril earrings, simply because I get enough mithril and crystals from my daily sessions. This means I don't need to spend extra gold on a trading post, but there is of course an opportunity cost to take into account. The bad news is that if we take the 2 previous points into account, the profit needs to be adjusted downward and is actually closer to 4 to 6 gold rather than 6 to 8. To pile on more bad news, we still need to take the trading post taxes into consideration as well, meaning that far less pieces are profitable than you would be led to believe when you're checking GW2 efficiency. The good news is that I was displaying the buy order prices and the gold you would be getting if you were instantly selling your Titanplate armor. This good news leads us to the second pitfall though, and that is their volume. Much like the problem in obtaining oiled ingredients through buy orders, only a couple of Titanplate armors sell every day. So the most prudent way to go about this is by listing a few and replenishing your stock as they sell. Personally, I don't find the margins that attractive, but it's worth keeping in mind in case the prices change. Next up is a list that would be way too long to discuss at length in a single video, let alone one that covers other crafting methods. The new handiwork recipes use over 120 already existing materials, which has caused some price changes. Some rare drops like the giant mushroom spore from sawgill mushrooms went from 1 gold to over 60. The same happened to palm lumber cores and jungle grass seeds, which come from palm trees or ancient saplings and jungle plants respectively. Mystic Forge recipes don't seem as impacted just yet. You can still forge a select few lodestones for profit, but fragments, shards and cores would still result in a loss. These cover only a very small part of all of the new ingredients, and instead of discussing every single one, I'll be referring to the ones worth making in every Monday's week ahead, so make sure you keep an eye out for those videos. These aren't the only materials or currencies that we can convert to gold in the Janthir Wilds though. The Lowland Shore introduced curious honeycombs and the Janthir Century curious Mersant currency. Both can be used as a currency at certain vendors or consumed for Ursus Obliges, much like we did in End of Dragons with Writs and Imperial Favor. Their biggest moneymaker are the code and cash keys. You can buy 25 keys a day which sell for 19 silver on a trading post, but I would advise you not to. Instead, you should use these on major and mythical caches that are spread throughout both maps. At the moment, these give you a near 100% drop rate for Mersat runestones, which sell for 3 times more. And that brings us to our final expansion materials, which aren't all that new actually. Essences have been renamed, but they're basically still the same as before. Most of the time during the previous expansion, we would have to craft motivations to get rid of them, but ever since the Wayfinder Mastery and the accompanying vendor were introduced, they can be converted to gold more easily. Fast farming has an excellent breakdown which should help you decide what to do with them. As it stands, you want Tyrian defense seals for the Divine Rift essences, which you can then exchange for supply boxes that contain materials. Masterwork essences are best crafted into rare cryptis motivations, which is something I mentioned earlier this week already. Because ever since the Festival of the Four Winds ended, ecto prices have been dropping back to their previous levels, which means that it became cheaper to craft them. And lastly, the rare rift essences are best spent on Season 4 currency boxes, which you can consume for volatile magic and trade in for trophy shipments. I chose to display the profits for instantly selling the items, and that is because of these currency boxes. If you're going for the listing price, then the site will recommend you take branded masks and craft diviner's weapons, which brings us back to the whole volume debate. If we look at their top pick, the spear gun, it only sold 8 times in the past month, which would be problematic if you're looking to get rid of hundreds or even thousands of rare essence. That about covers it. You can expect me to talk about these every now and then in the Mondays week ahead if things change, but I felt a complete rundown was already warranted.